So there are Oscar Fiascos, and then there are Oscar Fiascos. It's time to talk about cats. Hey guys, it's Brian. Welcome to the Awards Contender. I haven't made an Oscar Fiasco video in a while. It's been like 6 months. And I thought, looking at the end of the 2010s, what was a movie that, everybody thought very early on would be a huge Oscar contender and then just crashed and burned big time? I think the prime example for that era, around 2018, 2019, it's Cats, of course, directed by Tom Hooper and starring so many legends like Ian McKellen, Judi Dench. You've got some great actors like Idris Elba, Oscar winner Jennifer Hudson. You've got this, huge show going back to the 80s that so many people adore. And with movie musicals doing really well at the Oscars throughout the 2010s, and lots of other reasons I'm going to get into, Cats looked on paper to be a sure thing. A movie that was going to do well at the box office, that was going to be a major Oscar movie, and didn't really turn out that way, right? So in this video, I am breaking down everything Cats, the infamous 2019 box office critical disaster Cats, why we thought it was going to be an Oscar movie, and why it did turn out to be an Oscar fiasco. So let me begin with the 5 reasons why many of us thought, a year out maybe, before the film had finished production, before we had seen the trailer, I would say, in July of 2019. These are the 5 reasons why we thought Cats was going to be an Oscar contender. Number 1, Tom Hooper. Director Tom Hooper signing on to this project. Even though he didn't have a lot of style as a director from movie to movie, 3 of his films in a row had done very well at the Oscars, starting with The King's Speech in 2010, which he won the Best Director Academy Award for. The King's Speech won Best Picture, Best Actor for Colin Firth. That was the big winner for 2010. And then he does a movie musical, Les Miserables, 2 years later, which doesn't do as well as The King's Speech, but it still gets into Best Picture, it gets into Best Actor for Hugh Jackman, Anne Hathaway wins Best Supporting Actress. So, his follow-up to The King's Speech did not crash and burn at the Oscars. It did fairly well, I'd say. And then 2015, he gives us The Danish Girl, which gets into Best Actor for Eddie Redmayne, and it wins Best Supporting Actress for Alicia Vikander. The Danish Girl did not get into Picture Director. It wasn't that big of an awards player outside of the acting categories, but it's still it won Best Supporting Actress. All 3 of those films in a row from director Tom Hooper won an acting prize at the Oscars. So even if Cats wasn't going to do, let's say, as well as The King's Speech or even Les Miserables, it felt like with that track record from Tom Hooper, he was obviously making good choices throughout the 2010s. And having done a big successful movie musical, Les Miserables, based on, a successful musical on the stage, him taking over Cats made sense, at least at first, I'd say. And so because of the Tom Hooper of it all, I felt like Cats could maybe do well, come awards time. Number 2 is the track record movie musicals were having throughout the 2010s. This was a pretty good decade for movie musicals. Not all of them were huge hits or did amazing at the Oscars. Mary Poppins Returns comes to mind from Rob Marshall, but many movie musicals did well at the Oscars throughout the 2010s, starting with Les Miserables, like I talked about, Tom Hooper. That movie, I wasn't the biggest fan of it, but many people really love it and the performances are great, so it makes sense to me why that got into the Oscars. 2 years later, we have Into the Woods, which didn't get into picture and director and things, but it got into supporting actress for Meryl Streep, and it got some other nominations. Into the Woods did fairly well, I'd say. 2 years after that, you have La La Land, which almost won Best Picture, but was one of the heavy hitter awards contenders for 2016. And that was a musical. That was a movie with lots of singing and dancing. Audiences took to it, critics adored it, and it got nominated all over the place. At the Oscars, won Best Director, it won Best Actress for Emma Stone. La La Land was not based on IP. That was its own original creation, and people still showed up for that film. And come awards time, it was all over the place. So yeah, the movie musical was doing well throughout this decade. I mean, look at 2 years after that, 2018, we get both A Star is Born and Bohemian Rhapsody. Both musicals, right, in a sense, and they both got into Best Picture. A Star is Born won an Academy Award for Song. Bohemian Rhapsody won Best Actor for Rami Malek. So, 2018, 2019, things are looking pretty good, I would say, for the movie musical. And then Cats was going to be the big end of the year movie musical release. So again, on paper, that seemed like it would make sense and do well come awards time. Reason number 3, Cats looked to be a potential awards player, was that Oscar caliber cast. Not everybody, but there were 3 people in Cats where I was like, if the movie turns out well, it might get into at least one supporting acting category. You had Judi Dench, Oscar winner, multiple Oscar nominee Judi Dench, who has a sizable role in Cats. You have Oscar winner Jennifer Hudson singing Memory, that could have been an Oscar play if the movie was better. You had Ian McKellen, who, he's I've always said Ian McKellen's performance in Cats is the most interesting one. He's one of the few people in that movie who seems to be enjoying himself. So he's also a multiple Oscar nominee. So I feel like if Tom Hooper for Cats had hired mostly unknown actors, nobody who'd ever really been nominated at the Oscars, then I would have thought, maybe this won't be a big awards player. But clearly getting people like Dench and Hudson and McKellen showed that Oscar was on the minds of the people putting this movie together. Reason number 4 is the beloved source material. I mean, Cats was huge on Broadway. One of the most famous and popular stage musicals ever. It had been around for decades. It initially launched at the beginning of the 80s, and then it became the 5th longest running Broadway musical in history. So yeah, this was a very beloved show, and if the movie had good buzz, if people were loving it, audiences absolutely were going to show up for Cats. The way they had showed up for films like Les Miserables in 2012, like they had shown up a decade before that for Chicago 2002, people all over the world love Cats, were invested in Cats, and would have shown up, I think, to the movie in 2019 if people liked it, if the buzz was stronger, if there was at least decent word of mouth. I've always thought Cats could have done really well at the box office, maybe it done better that award season. But yeah, people just didn't take to it, as we're going to talk about. And the 5th reason Cats had awards buzz, of course, was its prime Christmas week release at the end of 2019. You would think a movie that turned out this god-awful, they would have seen early on, we clearly have a disaster on our hands. This is not going well. We need to fix some things. We need to take a few extra months to get the visual effects right. Let's push the release date of Cats back from December 2019 to 2020. I guess that wouldn't have worked out either. If they had pushed it back to June of 2020, then it would have been a Top Gun Maverick situation where we would have been waiting for Cats to come out for years, all the way to 2022. At least we didn't have to suffer in that regard, waiting months and months and months, for Cats to ultimately come out, crash and burn. The higher ups at Universal thought bringing out Cats Christmas week was going to do wonders for box office and awards and things when it came to that movie. But yeah, it didn't matter when they were going to release Cats. It was always going to be a box office and Oscar fiasco. So those are the 5 main reasons, I would say. In the early months of 2019, we were looking at Cats as being a big awards player, definitely at the Golden Globes. Like, it just seemed like outside of the movie being a disaster, it was going to get into some key categories at the Globes. And then even if it didn't get into picture director, let's say, at the Oscars, it seemed like the movie could at least get into song and maybe one acting category, maybe a couple other technical categories, like production design, like best visual effects. I don't remember, like, in January, February of 2019 being, like, all in on Cats, like, oh, this is going to be huge. I remember there was some trepidation even in those early days. Like, Cats is a unique kind of show on the stage, and there were so many thoughts. Like, how do you bring that to the movies? Like, how do you make that into a cinematic experience? Human actors portraying cats on the screen. Director Tom Hooper could have approached this movie in like 20 different ways. There were so many ways to do Cats as a movie. Ultimately, Hooper went in a wrong direction that somebody at some point, should have like steered in a better direction. There was always going to be a movie of Cats. It was a matter of time. Somebody at some point was going to do it, and it turned out to be this, which is a film I watched again recently. As of this recording, it is streaming on Netflix. It's right there on Netflix, guys. If you're just, you're having an off day and you want to put something on that is truly going to frighten you and just like drive you kind of batshit insane at a certain point, 2019's Cats is right there on Netflix. And watching it for a second time, I was just like, wow, very rarely do we get debacles like Cats anymore. Movies made on a grand scale with Oscar winners in the cast, an Oscar-winning director, Christmas week release, beloved source material, so many things going for it, and have it crash and burn this spectacularly. There are many, many reasons why Cats was an Oscar fiasco. I have 10. I've got 10 reasons why this movie crashed and burned, why it did not get a single Oscar nomination. Let's begin with number 1, the repugnant visual effects. Okay, so there was talk in the early days of developing Cats as a movie of making it animated. Making this an animated movie where you can hire like Oscar caliber actors, but they are just voicing the characters. I think Spielberg wanted to make Cats that way at some point, and then it never happened. I do think like that was the way to do Cats as a movie. It still might have been a box office bomb. I don't know. Like how many kids would have been like, take me to see the Cats movie, even though it's animated. It might not have worked perfectly. I don't know. We'll never know. That movie will never be made, let's be honest. But it would have been so much better than the visual effects they brought to the movie that actually exists. Live action actors being turned into CGI cats, keeping elements of their face, but then everything else is CGI. The entire world is CGI. There's nothing really tangible in this film, which is another reason why I'm like, why not just make it animation? Trying to have your cake and eat it too, having it be live action, but basically just be a world of CGI was a bad call. Apparently in the early days of development with Tom Hooper attached to direct, they thought about using makeup and costumes with fur for the characters. They experimented with using prosthetics and things and having it be a little bit more real world, I would say, where it's not like just so loaded with VFX. Like we really see the actors in full from head to toe and things. That also probably would have been weird and awkward, but better, I think, than what they eventually went with. Hooper was apparently dissatisfied with the prosthetics, saying, quote, "You ended up with full face prosthetics where you lost so much emotion, so all the paths seem to lead me back to visual effects, end quote. It seems like Hooper probably saw the disaster of this movie at some point, but was so far in, he couldn't get out. He was stuck in a way. I mean, he came aboard this project in May of 2016. The movie did not hit theaters until December 2019. So that's like 3.5 years of Tom Hooper's life. So even if along the way he had thoughts of like, maybe this isn't a great idea, maybe it's not for the best to have this be wall-to-wall visual effects, he probably got to a point where he's like, I have to make the movie, and I think like having it be wall-to-wall VFX is the only way to do it. So the actors on set performed in motion capture suits with tracking dots on their costumes and faces. And then after the movie wrapped, in April of 2019, the visual effects department went to work. And I mean, like, to get this movie ready in 7 months for a release, like where you have just every shot of a 2-hour movie, VFX all over the place when it comes to the actors, the sets, the backgrounds, the sky, everything being visual effects. To do that in just a few short months, that was a huge ask. I mean, even the most talented group of visual effects artists, they were going to struggle getting the movie ready in time. So you have, in a way, a double problem there. The visual effects approach is a bad one already, but then with, everything being hurried up to meet a Christmas week release date, the visual effects just don't turn out very well. And from scene to scene, from moment to moment, there is this unsettling, creepy aspect to Cats. Just the visual effects. Forget the story, forget the actors, forget everything else, the songs. Like, it's not a pleasurable experience to watch Cats at any moment in that 2-hour movie. And so I do think that is the number one reason why this movie was an Oscar fiasco, a fiasco in every sense. It was the horrific visual effects. Reason number 2 this movie failed was the narrative. Was a very sluggish, poorly paced narrative with no stakes, no story you're really interested in, no arc to the main character, just nothing to keep you invested like in the actual narrative, which tells of a tribe of cats called the Jellicles who decide which one will ascend to the Heaviside layer and come back to a new Jellicle life. That's like the story in a nutshell, I guess. But like, everybody is showing up to Cats for the music, for the songs. I think on the stage, a really compelling narrative wasn't as important, but in a movie, you have to tell us a story that has rising tension and suspense, and moments that build character, and keep us in its grip all the way through, and Cats doesn't have that. So in a sense, in this movie, you have a story that's not very interesting, that doesn't engage you on an emotional level, and you have those repugnant visual effects, and it's like, what are we doing here? What the hell is this movie supposed to make us feel? Why are we watching it? Like, what's the point, outside of some nice songs? It's as if the filmmakers thought the visual effects and the songs will keep us engaged all the way to the end. That's not enough. Even if the movie looked better, even if it looked great, even if every song is a total banger, you have to have a story that's interesting, a main character we want to follow, and Cats doesn't have that. And that takes me to reason number 3. I'm sorry, the lead actress, Francesca Hayward, has no presence in this movie. She is a total blank from one scene to the next, just always looking in awe and surprised. There's no character arc. There's nothing of interest in her character. It's not really her fault. In another project, maybe something completely live action, Francesca Hayward maybe could give a very good performance. She just seems very lost in this movie. Like, she got very little direction, that she's trying to emulate, the physicality of a Cats and not really build a character who the audience comes to like or love or feel empathy for or anything. There's just not much there. The fourth reason this movie failed was Rebel Wilson and James Corden, right? Like, you know, there's some good people in this movie. People who came out unscathed in a way, like Ian McKellen. And to some extent, I'd say Judi Dench. Like, she's such a legend. She was going to get through the disaster that was Cats. But yeah, Rebel Wilson and James Corden. We were all thinking it for much of the 2010s, especially when it came to Corden. His presence in a movie didn't always spell good things, right? And both Corden and Wilson in this movie are unwatchable. It is so just batshit cringe from the get-go. Like Wilson's first scene where she's singing and dancing and eating cockroaches. Some of the cockroaches are dancing on the table and stuff. That's the first scene in Cats where you are in for a true disaster of a cinematic production. She feels like she's making things up as she goes along, like she's improvising in things and trying to be funny, and it just, oh God, it doesn't work. James Corden, it takes a little bit longer to get to him, but by the time we get to Corden, it's really hard to not just turn this movie off, right? Like, he's also kind of improvising, it feels, and trying to be funny with his mannerisms, with his dialogue, and it's just like, no. This movie didn't need to be deadly serious all the way through. I don't think that would have been the right approach. It did need some humor along the way, but these were not the two actors to deliver that humor to the audience. They just weren't, I'm sorry. And then like months later, speaking of the Oscar fiasco of Cats, they came out in the 2020 ceremony dressed as their characters, right? Dressed as cats, presenting Best Visual Effects at the Academy Awards and making fun of their movie, making fun of the VFX in Cats. And I don't know about you, but that also rubbed me the wrong way. Like, oh, now you're making fun of this movie you signed up to be in, that you cashed checks for, and probably would have sung the movie's praises if it had turned out better and had done really well at the box office. Now, after the fact, you're making fun and at the Oscars of all places, like that, I didn't like that at all. So yeah, the Rebel Wilson and James Corden of it all was another reason this movie failed. Reason number 5 was the poor reception to the trailer released in July 2019. Were you there for that? We all remember that day, right? We all remember that day in July of 2019 when we saw the first footage of Cats. And we all went, ugh. We all went, oh God. Oh, this looks really bad. This looks really awful. But it's only July. Like, maybe they'll fix it. We had a bad reaction to the Sonic the Hedgehog trailer. Like, the look of Sonic was really bad. And they fixed it. They pushed that movie back 3 months, I think, to February 2020, and they got the look of Sonic right. And judging by the very, very poor reception to the trailer for Cats, you'd think they would have thought, okay, like, we probably should push this back to summer of 2020, and let's really take the time to work on these visual effects. Let's at least make that aspect to this movie work, even if, there's some other problems with it. We do need to spend some more time getting the look of the movie right. But again, they didn't. They stuck to that December release date. And I would say one of the main reasons this movie failed was the bad buzz leading into like October, November, December. That trailer created this stink that lingered all the way into the fall movie season. This wasn't an example of a movie where up until it opened, we all thought it was going to be really good. We thought it could be a big awards player. We all kind of knew in July of 2019, if they don't make some big changes with just the visual look to this movie, like, it's not gonna work. Nobody's gonna show up. This movie is going to be a massive disaster, and it's like, how did nobody at Universal smell that stench? How did somebody not push the brakes on Cats and say, guys, the buzz on this movie is bad. It's terrible. People hate the trailer. we need to fix this. We need to try things at least to fix this. And they never did. Really, really bizarre, I would say. Reason number 6, now we finally get to the actual release of Cats in December. It came out December 20th, 2019. The 6th reason this movie crashed and burned, of course, were those scathing reviews from critics. I don't know about you guys, but up until the weekend Cats came out, I was planning to take my mom and see it. We're both big movie musical fans. She loved Cats. She saw it more than once on Broadway and wanted to go. It was the scathing reviews that came out that week leading up to the release date where I went, I can't do it. I can't do it. I don't like the trailers. I'm not feeling it with this movie. And then the critics, if they had gone a little bit easier on it, if they had said it has problems, but there are some good things in it, maybe more people would have shown up, like myself. But they were so scathing. I just said, I'm good. I'm gonna skip this one. I don't think I need to see Cats outside of doing like an Oscar Fiasco video in the years to come. Maybe I'll never have to watch it. So a few quotes from the nation's top critics who reviewed Cats in December 2019. Peter DeBruge of Variety, he said it was, quote, one of those once-in-a-blue-moon embarrassments that mars the resumes of great actors, end quote. David Rooney of The Hollywood Reporter said it was a film that was, quote, hobbled by a major misjudgment in its central visual concept, end quote. And for the LA Times, Justin Chang said, quote, with its grotesque design choices and busy metronomic editing, Cats is as uneasy on the eyes as a Hollywood spectacle can be, end quote. I mean, I could go on. I could read probably 30 quotes out there, like on Rotten Tomatoes, a bunch of critics who really hate this movie. I think you get the point, right? The critics hated this. There might have been a handful who liked it more than others. Maybe there's a critic out there who called it a masterpiece. But like 90% or more of critics just absolutely loathed this movie, let us all know, said don't waste your money, don't waste your time. And so yeah, that was a big part of why this film became a major Oscar fiasco. Reason number 7 was the poor box office. The truly horrendous box office for Cats. This movie in the United States only made $27 million. It made $47 million in other territories, making for a total of $74.6 million against a budget of about $95 million. And that's before marketing. That's before so many other things that factor into a movie making money for its studio. Deadline Hollywood calculated the net loss of the film to be about $113 million for Universal. So, like, a movie can withstand bad reviews, but then be a huge box office hits to be an Oscar contender in at least, like, some below-the-line categories. I do think even with those abysmal, scathing reviews from critics, if the movie had been a bigger hit with audiences, had done well at the box office, it probably, let's say, gets into original song at the Oscars. It gets something, but because like it got the bad reviews and it had the really bad box office, that was it, man. That was just that was it for this movie being a potential awards player. It just wasn't going to happen. And it's especially embarrassing for the movie to fail at the box office as hard as it did because it did come out Christmas week. More people go to the movies around Christmas than any other time of the year. People were attending the latest Star Wars film, Rise of Skywalker, in droves, and there were some at Universal who thought, okay, a lot of people are going to show up for Star Wars and then they'll go see Cats. They thought like young women would want to go see Cats. But they didn't. They preferred to just go see Star Wars and then go home. I do think in terms of the box office for Cats, the word of mouth got out very quickly. Even if some audiences hadn't necessarily read those reviews, they knew within those first days of the movie's opening this wasn't worth my time. Reason number 8 was Cats at the Golden Globes only getting that one nomination for Best Original Song, Beautiful Ghosts. Like, remember, the Golden Globe nominations came out before Cats hit theaters. So sometimes, I mean, maybe not as much these days, but going back decades, if the movie was bad, but it came out at the tail end of December, and the Golden Globe nominations are already out, like sometimes bad movies get that little awards bump from the Golden Globes, who present their nominations like sometimes a week or two before that film is opened. I think about The Tourist from 2010, starring Johnny Depp and Angelina Jolie. Like, if The Tourist had come out in September, October, maybe even November, and it crashed and burned with audiences, Golden Globe voters were not going to give it nominations in Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress. But because The Tourist came out in mid-December, Golden Globe voters were not able to get ahead of the bad buzz and the word of mouth around that movie. And so that led to host Ricky Gervais just roasting that film on multiple occasions, that ceremony, with Angelina Jolie and Johnny Depp in the audience. Remember that? So it's possible, I think, that Cats could have gotten a few more Golden Globe nominations, right? Like, it could have gotten into Best Picture, Musical, or Comedy. It could have gotten like a supporting actress nomination for Hudson or something, along with that original song nomination. But even the Golden Globe voters in 2019 knew Cats was a stinker. And so like they threw it a tiny lifeline. They gave it an original song nomination. But yeah, I mean, we knew before Cats was even out in theaters, like, because it underperformed at the Golden Globes so spectacularly, like, we knew early on nothing was going to happen with Cats at the Oscars. And so on December 26, 2019, Universal Pictures took Cats off their for your consideration page. Like, they just wiped that title out. They knew nothing was going to happen. Now, this is not to say that Cats didn't get nominated anywhere outside of the Golden Globes. This takes me to reason number 9. You knew this was coming. Cats was a major Razzie Award winner and nominee. In early 2020, at the Razzies, Cats won Worst Picture, Worst Director, Worst Screenplay, Worst Supporting Actor for James Corden, and Worst Supporting Actress for Rebel Wilson. And I have nothing negative to say about those wins. Those are all very well deserved, I would say. The movie was also nominated for Worst Actress, Francesca Hayward. It was nominated for Worst Supporting Actress, Judi Dench. It won the award for Worst Screen Combo, any two half feline, half human hairballs. I think we all knew pretty early on the big awards contention in early 2020 for Cats was going to be at the Razzies. You know, that's where the movie was going to sweep. And sweep hard it did. I mean, 6 wins, right? Like, no movie could come close for 2019. When it comes to the Oscars, you can't come back from getting a bunch of nominations at the Razzies, a bunch of wins. Like, you can withstand maybe one big Razzie nomination and still get into the Oscars in a reasonable capacity. But like, if your movie is nominated at the Razzies in picture, director, acting categories, like, it's over. You can't get in at the Oscars outside of like maybe one technical category or something. The showing for Cats at the Razzies, I mean, that was like the absolute final death knell to its Oscar chances. And finally, reason number 10, Cats is one of the most colossal Oscar fiascos in history, is that it's a really bad movie. It's really bad. I would give it a half star out of 5. Nothing works in Cats for me. Nothing is of interest in this movie. That I have slogged through it twice now. I mean, it's just like, Oh my frickin' God. I never want to have to watch this movie again. I don't want to ever have to talk about it again on this channel. I felt like looking over this last decade we've had of cinema and talking about like Oscar fiascos, box office disasters, you have to, at some point on a channel like this, talk about Cats. Because, hoo boy, was that a disaster in 1,000 different ways. It destroyed multiple careers. I would say at the top, Tom Hooper. Where has he been since Cats? He has been just silence, right? No new movies, like even announced for him that I know of. So, I mean, this was a guy on top of the world. 3 big Oscar films back to back that all did semi-well at least, if not really well at the Oscars. And then he did Cats. And it's like it was all over for Oscar-winning director Tom Hooper. Francesca Hayward, the star of the movie, we haven't really heard from since. And I'm sure that a few people at Universal probably lost their jobs over Cats, right? Like, I don't know that, but like, it seemed like somebody had to take the fall for that movie, right? It's a sad story, I'd say. It's a sad story because there are so many fans of that stage musical. And I do think there was a way to turn Cats into a movie and have it work. Have it be successful, like with critics at the box office, with awards like the Oscars. But the movie they ultimately made, the one that many of us, unfortunate souls, have seen with our own eyes, it just doesn't work. It was a total disaster and one of the all-timer Oscar fiascos in history.